Tom blindsided me with a sudden divorce proposal upon my return home. Up until this moment, I had supported him wholeheartedly, but his betrayal is unforgivable. Concealing my inner turmoil, I responded with a composed demeanor, stating, "Being with you feels like a drag, so let's get a divorce. I'll take custody of the kid for $800,000, fine." Tom must have been rattled by my nonchalant reply. But it's too late for regrets. From now on, he'll face the consequences. My name is Emily, a 25-year-old receptionist at a hotel. I married Tom, my boss, last year. Discovering my pregnancy at the beginning of this year, I resigned from my job, bidding farewell to a warm workplace. Since then, I've been diligently managing household chores and caring for our newborn son, who's quite demanding at night. Tom's behavior took a sudden turn. Despite his previous dedication to our family, his reluctance to participate in social events at work has morphed into regular outings, even after becoming a father. He's adopted a new lifestyle that raises suspicions. Returning from a recent drinking party, Tom was unusually jovial and sober, a stark contrast to his usual inability to handle alcohol. As I approached him, I noticed a distinct absence of the telltale scent of liquor, further fueling my doubts. A faint hint of women's perfume lingered in the air. "You usually have a drink with appetizers as soon as you get home, right?" Today, the sales manager wasn't sitting next to me. Thanks to that. Stop worrying about every little thing. You just need to concern yourself with the house. People often unknowingly reveal their dishonesty through various behaviors, such as using negative words or speaking faster. Tom's abrupt change in attitude signaled to me that he was concealing something. It became evident when he continued attending drinking parties, often returning home in the early morning hours. My suspicion deepened when Tom, after arriving home early one morning, went to work without sleeping. He left his phone unusually on the sofa, which I found while debating whether to return it. Tom's reaction upon realizing his oversight confirmed my doubts. "Why are you touching my phone without permission?" he snapped, snatching it away with disdain. His defensive behavior solidified my certainty that he was hiding something on his phone. Confronting him immediately seemed tempting, but risking the evidence being deleted by him would not be wise, especially if it involved another woman. I chose not to look. "I wouldn't resort to such a heinous deed," I shot back, not allowing Tom's combative manner to subdue me. His attempts to use force to establish authority just strengthened my resolve to hold my ground. I would have challenged him and stormed out of the house if I had been by myself, but I couldn't take a chance on what might occur next because our beloved boy was in the picture. For the time being, I had to put up with it in order to wait to reveal Tom's wrongdoings. I balled my fists and tried not to get angry, the hurt of not being angry almost getting to me. Our son abruptly woke up crying from the other room and frantically called for me. After sensing my concern, "Shut him up already." I flinched at Tom's angry outburst, his hostile posture sending shivers down my spine. When did our partnership reach this point? When we initially got married, there was nothing like this. Or maybe I was just not seeing the indications. When I thought back on our marriage, I saw that Tom had always shown his true colors by his deeds. It was obvious that I was handling the majority of the childcare and housework, as evidenced by my dictating duties and disregarding obligations. I wondered why I had ever gotten married in the first place, as the weight proved to be too much to bear. I was desperate to get away from Tom's apathetic demeanor and the growing amount of housework. A turning point occurred just when I was considering divorcing and leaving with my son. "Emily, what is this?" Tom's voice broke the tension, announcing an encounter that would turn everything upside down. It had been about a month since I started looking into Tom's private life. Now that my son was finally asleep and I had a little time to myself, Tom showed me a specific picture. When I paused for a moment, there it was, a moment from a happier era. With past co-workers who had previously greeted me with open arms at my former workplace. "What are you doing leisurely outside while I'm at work?" Tom asked in an accusing tone. "I just wanted to have a cup of tea and unwind after finishing the housekeeping." "What's the issue with that?" I simply responded, even though his subsequent remarks pricked me. "Where is the source of this money?" I gave you living costs, but you've wasted them." Tom raised his voice, clearly frustrated. Tom lost all sense of reality and lost all hearing, so he let out a loud cry. Our son, who had been napping, suddenly woke up and began to cry loudly, adding a new level of intensity to the stressful moment and filling the home. "Cease talking, put an end to that dreadful crying," Tom yelled, as if he didn't hear our toddler in the other room. I knew instinctively that I had to keep my son safe. I took a firm stand and stood in front of the door, keeping Tom from passing. "No, I won't move," I firmly said, locking eyes with him. "Are you aware of your actions? You're attempting to scream at a newborn child," I said again, maintaining a calm tone despite the mounting anxiety. "Isn't it insane to attempt to yell at such a tiny child?" It felt like my eyes were awakened in that instant. At that moment, I realized that staying with this man would not lead to a happy future for either myself or my son. I made up my mind to go, and I had more than good reason to make it happen. I just needed to assemble the necessary resources. "With all my heart, I want to go now," I declared. "My resources are sufficient for the task. All I have to do is find a new career that is unrelated to my old one." Tom immediately swung the door wide and shoved me aside while I considered my alternatives. He was cold and impersonal when he gave his command, "Leave. I don't need a lady who can't respect her husband. Gather your belongings and get out of here quickly." Shocked and dismayed, I tried to reason with him, but he dismissed my pleas with disdain. "You're nothing but a burden," he spat, his words dripping with contempt. "After squandering my money and daring to talk back to me, I have no use for you anymore. Take the child and go." With harsh words and rough actions, Tom thrust my belongings and our crying son towards me, then forcibly expelled us from our home, locking the door behind us. Left stranded in a silent back alley late at night, I cradled my newborn son, his cries echoing in the emptiness. Filled with regret and apologies, I sought refuge in a nearby park, tightly holding my son to shield him from the chill of the night. Tears streamed down my face as I vowed to protect him at all costs. My only plan was to seek help at the city hall come morning, but fate had other cruel intentions. As if to add insult to injury, the sky opened up and rain began to fall. With no umbrella or shelter, I hugged my son closer, tears mingling with the raindrops. In that moment of despair, I couldn't help but dwell on what could have been. If only I had severed ties with Tom sooner. If only I had been stronger. Perhaps none of this would have come to pass. Lost in my remorseful thoughts, I was startled by the unexpected appearance of an elderly gentleman, elegant and kind-hearted, offering us his umbrella. Concern etched on his face, he inquired about our circumstances, his compassion a stark contrast to the cruelty I had just endured. Moved by his kindness, I found solace in his presence, grateful for the unexpected glimmer of hope amidst the darkness of the night. Even though it felt strange to be approached at this hour, there was something about the old man that made me feel comfortable. He listened silently when I told him about my terrible experiences, his actions saying loudly as he patted my tears with his towel. "Please come to my house," he said huskily. "You can be looked after by female servants. The baby would find it too difficult to spend the night here." I found myself accepting his invitation as a torrent of tears were released by his kind tone and sincere care. We went into his house with my son in tow, crying all the way. Not knowing what astonished us, he reassured me, "Leave the rest to me," and I nodded, appreciative of the break. My kid received comfort and attention from the courteous and helpful servants in his home. For the first time in what seemed like ages, I was able to sleep soundly because of their kindness. When I awoke, a maidservant told me sweetly that my phone had been ringing non-stop. They had not interfered with my sleep, which I found to be a very kind act. Upon reviewing my call log, I saw multiple texts from Tom requesting my prompt return. "I am sorry I ever had to deal with such a man. His actions just served to highlight how inadequate a spouse he was." I hesitated to return home, but the thought of involving the police seemed even more troublesome. Choosing to confront Tom instead, I gathered my courage and went back with my son in tow. Little did I know, it marked the beginning of a fierce battle between Tom and me. Where the hell have you been until now? No breakfast prepared, and the house is a mess. Tom's voice boomed as soon as we stepped inside. Despite the urge to retort, I held my tongue. I'm right here, aren't I? I responded calmly, and how could I get in when you've locked the door? I had no way of knowing there wouldn't be breakfast. His belittling remarks only fueled my resolve. If you regret not having breakfast, maybe you shouldn't have driven me out, I countered. If you were as smart as you claim, you would have avoided the situation altogether. But now, you're the one suffering the consequences. My words seemed to strike a nerve. When Tom's temples twitched with frustration, I can't take it anymore. I can't go on with you, he declared, slamming a piece of paper onto the table. It was a divorce notice, stamped with his name and seal. He likely expected me to panic, to beg for forgiveness, but I refused to play into his hands. Without hesitation, I grabbed a pen and my seal, signing the document before his astonished eyes. Surprisingly obedient, aren't you? He sneered. Unemployed and with no parents to turn to, what are you going to do? Ignoring his taunts, I calmly gathered the rest of my belongings. Well, whatever, this feels refreshing, I remarked, a sense of liberation washing over me. But Tom wasn't finished. Being with you makes me poor. Let's divorce, he said with a mocking laugh. I'll give you the kid, but you owe me $800,000. His demand for an exorbitant sum didn't faze me. I simply continued packing, refusing to show any sign of agitation. Inside, I despised him more than ever, but I remained resolute in my decision to move on. I felt a profound sense of dismay as Tom attempted to sway me with money, hoping to manipulate my emotions, knowing that any verbal confrontation would likely lead to his dominance and my submission, resulting in a more restricted existence for me. I kept my composure. With a serene smile, I quickly affirmed his proposal without hesitation. Are you okay with that? Cal, visibly shaken, stuttered, clearly taken aback by the enormity of the sum, $8 million. Sensing his bewilderment, I calmly replied, understood. Please proceed with the arrangements. Goodbye. And so, with a substantial transfer of $8 million, Tom and I finalized our divorce. Despite discovering his infidelity and gathering evidence, I had not initially sought compensation. My intention was to demonstrate to him a life far more challenging than mere monetary recompense. 2 weeks later, as the sun rose, Tom's frantic calls flooded my phone. I ignored the first call, and when I finally answered the second, I promptly disconnected, anticipating his enraged response. I intentionally provoked him, refusing to engage until the third attempt. It was a calculated move to unsettle the usually short-tempered Tom, ensuring the conversation would unfold on my terms. Maintaining a position of dominance required me to speak while keeping Tom irritated, a task that brought me immense satisfaction and a sense of superiority. You're as noisy as ever, I remarked casually, taking a sip of my drink and flipping through a magazine, feigning busyness to mask the leisure of my holiday. What do you want? I'm rather occupied at the moment, I continued, the claim of busyness a mere facade to assert my contentment. Tom's accusations pierced through the facade. You did it, didn't you? What have you done? He cried out, his anguish only adding to my amusement. What are you talking about? I haven't done anything, I replied coolly, relishing in the chaos I had orchestrated. In reality, I had stripped Tom of everything, his wife, his job, his money, and his family, but I maintained my facade of innocence, reveling in Tom's torment. No, you're the only one who can do such a thing. Give me back everything, you liar, he pleaded, his cries only fueling my amusement. With a barely audible voice, I continued to toy with him. Why don't you tell me what I did? It seems I've been quite forgetful lately, I taunted, enjoying my moment of power while Tom spiraled into despair. After our divorce, Tom quickly remarried, a revelation that brought me little surprise. His new wife, the woman with whom he had cheated on me, turned out to be the daughter of a prominent client company's president. Tom's rush to divorce me and marry her became clear when she became pregnant, highlighting the strategic importance of their union in securing a lucrative contract with the client. Tom's hurried pressure led to our divorce when he had planned, but little did he know it was just the beginning of his downfall. Today, he revealed that he had been divorced by his wife and expelled from his home. The revelation of his previous marriage to me, learning that I also have a child. She was furious and demanded a divorce and compensation. In his panic and emotional outburst, Tom lashed out at his wife, causing such a commotion that even his in-laws had to intervene, leading to mental and physical torment for his wife. His workplace was notified of the incident, resulting in termination. They chose to prioritize their client's interests over his employment, leaving him both jobless and abandoned by his wife. Tom lost everything in a single day, including his career, his spouse, and his steady income. He had to spend all of his savings, $8 million, on damages to the company in compensation. After receiving $8 million from me, he cried out in desperation, but he could only hold me responsible for his bad luck. What makes her aware of my prior marriage? You are the only person who could do such an action. You stole my joy from me, Tom wailed, clearly desperate. I closed the magazine I was reading and made the decision to confront him because I was tired of his unapologetic attitude. I was enraged by his resistance to own his wrongdoing. Even after all, you still haven't given your acts any thought. Do you not believe it is worthy? I confronted him because I could stand his attitude no longer. You stole my joy from me. All of the things that are currently happening to you, cheating on me, mistreating your wife, being divorced, and losing your job, are consequences of your own behavior. They're all the results of your own wrongdoings, I firmly stated, not allowing him to shift the responsibility elsewhere. However, Tom's reply just made me more irate. How absurd. How could you preach to me, someone with less standing than me? You must be in a precarious situation where you cannot even support a child on your own, he shot back, his conceit remaining unwavering even in the face of failure. So this busy life must be your punishment for leaving me, isn't it? Tom's assumption about my hectic schedule was both amusing and misguided. When I lifted the magazine in front of me, I couldn't help but internally scoff at his misunderstanding. Is this what you call busy? I remarked sarcastically, my tone refined yet dripping with mockery. I've been busy reading a beauty magazine until now, but I'm done now. I'm going to enjoy my second cup of tea and perhaps do some knitting. How busy is that? Tom's incredulous response only fueled my amusement. Are you making fun of me? Even over the phone, I could almost picture his face turning bright red with anger, like a boiled octopus. Suppressing a laugh, I couldn't help but find his frustration entertaining. His threats of coming to my house only elicited a chuckle from me. You can come, but you'll be turned away, I replied calmly. I'll instruct the servants to recognize you as an outsider, unwelcome in my home. Yes, now I lived in a mansion with my father, a fact I was eager to reveal. I switched to a video chat and showed Tom something unexpected. My father, the chairman of his place of employment. Hey, Tom, is this our initial encounter? My dad greeted him, which took Tom by surprise. Tom was unable to process the event and felt confused. Tom's dismay was evident as the facts came to light. My father was disowned because of the criticism of his family for their unconventional affair with my mother. Despite the difficulties, my mother suggested we split up and that I become his official child. Upon his legal recognition, Tom's attempts to control and manipulate me ended. Fittingly, when he became speechless upon realizing the depth of my family background, they didn't want to damage the conglomerate's reputation. Even though they disapproved of the marriage, they acknowledged the child and gave monthly assistance. Your mom passed away a while back. Emily was told that I didn't exist, even though I was eager to meet her and her siblings. It would have been too harsh to tell a small child that her father was away in such a situation. My mother passed away the previous year. As it happens, she had asked my father to look after me, and he had been keeping a watchful eye on me behind closed doors. I'd heard rumors at work about your marriage, but I was surprised to see Emily outdoors in the rain. Were you under the chairman's care that day? I inquired. Yes, my father helped us when we were caught in the rain, responded Emily. My father steadied me with a gentle hand on my back as I stared at him. You mentioned that I lacked financial strength, I said. How? Unfortunate, my father's company, which has $13 billion in assets overall, is now under my control. I don't worry about $8 million, that's the entire narrative, because my father made the proposition after assisting us. I wasn't alarmed by the substantial sum of $800 million. The woman in the picture is my acquaintance's daughter. I'll give her the rundown and make the divorce request. They have to be sympathetic, Emily. Don't worry about the money. I'll get everything back for you. Put our child and yourself first. She is the priceless heirloom your mother departed with. I'll make sure you're not sad. You're safe to rest, I told Emily. After hearing those remarks, I easily accepted my father's divorce. I transferred the specified sum without second thought. You were merely a pawn in our hands the entire time, I said, spotting through his plots. Seemingly vanquished, he made no counter-movement. Maybe he recognized he was going to have to give in, and so the bitter argument with him came to an end. Tom never bothered us once more. After a few years, my son started primary school. In the company of my father and son, I enjoyed a happy private and professional life. I at last experienced the warmth of a family thanks to the staff's compassionate treatment of us. That's all about the first story, and now let's watch another similar story. Apologies, I have an incredible fiancé now. Are you feeling envious? It's intriguing how those who belittle others often become unattractive themselves. Her once charming face now seems contorted, not just to me, but to my sister and her husband as well. They've always looked down on my partner. My anger peaked, surpassing my usual patience. My name is Luna, and I'm 27 years old. Though I say I work in printing, I don't operate large machines. I'm part of the design department, crafting various flyers and catalogs while accommodating customer requests, despite the decline in printed materials due to digital stylization. My design workload remains bustling and fulfilling. Thankfully, I have a growing number of clients specifically requesting my services. The Christmas event flyer I recently designed was a hit, and the compliments I received genuinely make me happy. This job feels like a calling. I once thought I'd remain single, dedicating my life to work. That changed when my father was hospitalized for appendicitis. During a visit, a young doctor named James approached me. He's now my boyfriend and recently became my fiancé. Life's unexpected encounters truly amaze me. Despite my dedication to work, once marriage was on the horizon, I found myself drawn to wedding magazines, indulging in the excitement of planning. Sitting in the living room, enjoying tea and flipping through a magazine, a hand suddenly snatched it away. Hey, wait a minute, what's this? A wedding magazine? Why are you looking at something like this? My younger sister, Mary, scolded, taking the magazine from me. You getting married? Seriously, look in the mirror first. You should know your place. You don't even have a boyfriend, let alone getting married. On the other hand, she continued boasting about her boyfriend, unprompted. However, in contrast to me, my sister has always been like this. I have a simple face, but she has a face that is quite adorable, which is one of the reasons why she is so well liked. All of the people around her, with the exception of our parents and myself, are always willing to accommodate her whims. Everyone else is a yes man. The result of this was that she began to perceive herself as the focal point of the universe. This arrogant sister of mine, with whom I had grown up, started to look down on me and warn me to keep away, as if my very existence could make her feel less important. Regardless of how diligently I studied, she argued that my efforts were in vain all the time. It was her way of asking, "Why don't you give up?" Once more, I was asked out again. You have to work hard to be popular. Even if our parents reprimanded her severely, she would still bemoan the fact that she was envious of her sister, who received no attention at all. Unfortunately, it was too late. Her disposition had not changed, and the verbal abuse she had been directing toward me had simply gotten worse. When my sister and I grew older, she began to address me as you. I groaned and took a deep breath before mustering the confidence to speak up, since I was sick of her never-ending boasting about her lover. To tell you the truth, I do have a boyfriend. The truth is that we are engaged. I'm looking at wedding magazines because we're getting married in a short amount of time, I announced. At that moment, my sister's motions came to a complete and utter standstill. She smirked with a sardonic look after she had been staring at me with great concentration. Oh my goodness. So, you were successful in locating someone who is interested in you, she answered. What exactly is it about you that is so wonderful? He likes my energetic and cheerful personality, I said with confidence. This is a falsehood. With a dismissive tone, she said, you're probably just a meal ticket. I'll continue working, and he understands that I can't be a perfect housewife, I responded in response exaggeratedly. My sister acted as though she was unaware. What's up? You are going to get married, but you still intend to continue working. This is very unorthodox, the woman observed. I see, you are marrying a poor man. The way she spoke touched a nerve. It seemed as though she couldn't turn her gaze away from me. There is no problem with money. He is a physician, therefore there is no fear about his income. My response was, I just want to keep working, and I meant it. Immediately, my sister became completely silent. After a sigh of relief, I went back to my room and went to sleep. When I muttered, "Ah, a doctor, I see," I had no idea that my sister was uttering those words with a significant tone inside her voice. The first thing that we did when we were considering getting married was to have a conversation with our parents. When James arrived at my home, he first greeted my parents, and then the comfortable atmosphere abruptly altered the moment my sister entered the room. "Oh, is that the person to whom you had proposed wedding?" She made the remark. "He is quite handsome, isn't he?" "Mary, were you not out of it?" "Unfortunately, I had to cancel my plans because my sister's fiancé is going to be coming to visit." Despite the fact that she was unaware of it, I was happy that she was not present by chance. It was due to the fact that I had a negative feeling about it. Throughout the years, it had occurred on multiple occasions. It was my sister who took my lover away from me when I was still a student. After I started working as an adult, I found myself without a boyfriend. My sister continued to create boyfriends for me in order to ensure that anything like this would never happen again. Although the prospect of my sister returning made me feel anxious, she had also matured during this time. I had a strong desire to think that she would not engage in such a behavior as snatching my fiancé. It seemed strange how close my sister was to my fiancé. It was impossible for me to ignore the fact that James' cheeks were flushed. My negative emotion came back to me. Is it possible for us to act as if the engagement never took place? I've made the decision to end our relationship and begin a new relationship with Mary, my sister announced. It was a wonderful fit for the goal. My sister would take my boyfriend away from me. Even though I am an adult who is working, I never imagined that this would happen. My apologies for taking your fiancé, but I suppose it's something that can't be avoided. After all, I am cuter and more charming, and James's pursuit was so intense, my sister observed, displaying a condescending attitude throughout the conversation. She did not apologize for her behavior. James, who had been my fiancé at one point, was standing next to her and laughing. He said, seriously, who would have realized that you had such a cute sister? My decision to become engaged to you would have been different if I had known. Before we get married, it's a good thing that we're going to end our relationship. As soon as I caught a glimpse of that twisted smile on his face, all sentiments I had for him evaporated without a trace. The feeling of loathing was the only thing that remained. I am relieved that I did not marry someone like you, a man who is readily able to have a relationship with another woman. On the other hand, I said, here, take Mary as a parting gift. You are nothing but a vengeful loser. With a trace of resentment in her voice, my sister retorted, seriously, you are certainly not attractive at all. It seems that the two of them, lost in their own delusions, don't understand how I feel. I'm sorry, but being involved with you is a complete and utter waste of time. All you are doing is making excuses for your defeat. This is a complete and utter waste of time. I never want to see you again. Farewell," they declared when they departed with a disdainful attitude to the very end of their departure. I never saw them again since my parents were so angry that they were prohibited from visiting our family. As a result, I never saw them again. On the other hand, I was informed by rumors that they entered into a marriage, but I no longer really care about it. Not only had it been 3 years since I had split ways with my sister and her husband, but I had also turned 30 years old while continuing to work as hard when I had before. During the course of it all, there was one client who discovered that they liked what I had done and decided to become a repeat customer. There was a man named William. During the course of our conversation at work, he asked me out for a meal, and then he asked me out on a date. I still don't know why he did that. An invitation to be in a relationship with him was extended to me during one of our dates. Honestly, I was experiencing a lot of joy as a result of William's apparent sincerity. I was confident that he would not behave in the same manner as my former relationship. To be honest, however, my sister had become a significant source of trauma for me. Sometimes, just sometimes, it was something that disturbed me a little bit. Consequently, I made the decision to be truthful and let him know about my sister as well as my ex-boyfriend. I went so far as to show him a picture of my sister and observe his response to our interaction. Even after viewing the photograph, however, he did not show any signs of alteration in his expression. He offered me a warm grin and casually glanced aside from the photograph that he was looking at. The fact that I used to be quite popular is something that I am aware may come off as odd to mention. However, despite the fact that I have encountered a great number of women who are prettier and more gorgeous than my sister, none of them have managed to pique my curiosity. I once entertained the notion that perhaps I was destined to walk life's path alone, without the companionship of marriage. However, fate had a different plan in store for me. In my line of work, I've learned to see beyond mere appearances. True beauty emanates from within. This realization dawned upon me the day I met you, Luna. Your radiance wasn't just confined to our professional interactions. It transcended into our leisurely moments together, whether sharing a meal or embarking on a date. Your genuine smile illuminated every moment. Your zest for life was palpable, and I found myself captivated by your inner and outer beauty. In my awkward attempt to express my admiration, I inadvertently laid bare my feelings. Luna, you're not just beautiful, you're enchanting. Never before have I encountered someone as remarkable as you. Would you consider embarking on a journey of companionship with me, with the possibility of marriage? My heart earnestly longs for your acceptance. Amidst my embarrassment and your protests, my affections persisted. Eventually, we embarked on a journey together, culminating in a joyous union. 1 year later, as newlyweds, we navigated our shared life with ease, drawing closer with each passing day. Even mundane tasks like household chores became a source of shared joy. Your culinary skills, honed from years of living alone, never failed to delight me, especially on days when weariness weighed heavy. Our leisure days were spent in each other's company, exploring the world around us. Yet, amidst this bliss, an unexpected encounter shattered our peace. A reunion with a specter from the past, casting a shadow over our idyllic existence. In that moment, I thought I glimpsed an ordinary figure, only to be greeted by a voice from the depths of memory, a voice I had hoped never to hear again. When my gaze wandered over the bedding section, I didn't need to see her face to recognize her, despite 4 years having passed since our last encounter. Mary, my sister, stood there, unmistakable. Beside her stood James, my former fiancé. Mary's features seemed more defined now, perhaps a result of aging or a newfound assertiveness. James, on the other hand, wore a smirk, his figure noticeably leaner. Surprised to see me, Mary's tone dripped with disdain. Just browsing, I replied nonchalantly. This place is a bit upscale for your taste, isn't it? She sneered. James chimed in agreement, mocking my presence as detrimental to the store's image. Their words pricked at my patience. but I chose silence over confrontation. Knowing it futile to engage with their hostility, however, their insults only grew louder, drawing unwanted attention from onlookers and store staff. Out of exasperation, I made an attempt to depart while holding my husband's hand, but I discovered that he was firmly anchored in place. It was at that moment that my sister and James became aware of him, and their amazement was unmistakable. The question that my sister asked in astonishment was, "Who is this, Luna?" I gently responded, "My husband," she said. Their response was prompt and scathing, calling into question his decision to marry someone whom they considered to be plain, and making jokes about our alleged financial situation. I was so disgusted by their actions that I made one more attempt to leave, but my husband's hold on me stayed strong. Their disdain was crystallized in that instant, and our will to rise above it was crystallized as well. In a situation where both partners are employed, it is only normal for me to participate in the chores around the house. Due to the fact that we are financially secure, I frequently rely on housekeeping services in order to maintain my comfortable lifestyle as a full-time housewife. Nevertheless, my sister's statements were sarcastic, loaded with sarcasm, and strained to mock the decisions that I made. "Apologies for being on the winning team," she hissed, implying that she was more capable than the other squad. My fury was heightened by her statements, which were further compounded by her smug smile. The final blow, which served as a reminder of her previous act of betrayal, was as follows: "I am sorry that I stole your wonderful fiancé. Even after you get married, you will continue to live a poor existence because you are with such a simple man at your side, an ideal pairing, one that is bland and uninteresting. Is it possible that you are envious of my joy?" The words that she spoke cut deep into me, but it was when she made disparaging remarks about my spouse that I hit my breaking point. This kind of rudeness was not something I could tolerate in any way, especially not toward him. "Enough, Luna," he remarked when he moved forward in the conversation. "It's fine." During the time that I was getting ready for a confrontation, my husband made a courteous introduction to himself. On the other hand, his determination was clear even beneath the surface. "Welcome to our meeting. Hey, my name is William, and I am the one that married your sister." My sister's answer was tinged with disdain when she made fun of his name and questioned the value of his existence. On the other hand, my husband did not recoil. His business card was handed over to her with a calm and determined demeanor, and he addressed her straight. "You say really mean things to Luna, don't you?" Using the argument that she had the right to criticize based on beauty, her response was, as one might expect, caustic. Nevertheless, the response that my husband gave to her shattered her veneer and revealed the ugly side of her. "That may be your law, but for me, your twisted personality reflects your true ugliness, far beyond any physical appearance." My husband persevered in presenting her with the facts that she refused to admit. Despite the fact that her face was reddened with rage, in the midst of my sister's outrage, I noticed a light of self-awareness in her eyes. I saw a flash of realization in her eyes at that same moment. Not only was I impressed by the bravery of my husband, but I was also completely taken aback by the unexpected response that my sister gave to their conversation. A dispute between us brought to light the complexities of our relationship, revealing facts that we had avoided for a considerable amount of time. I got a sudden awareness that my sister's hate for me had always been rooted in her own insecurities. This realization came to me like a sudden revelation. While I was observing her clearly shaken, I couldn't help but wonder if there was even a sliver of a chance that we could come to an understanding with one another. When it comes to those whose opinions are irrelevant, it is simple to disregard them. They are not important. Nevertheless, to aggressively pursue the mate of another person, this is the result of a profoundly ingrained jealousy, an envy of something that is unachievable. I found myself echoing the comments of my husband, encouraging my sister to tackle her lack of pride and confidence in herself. Although she strongly denied having any sentiments of envy, her voice wavered and her determination wavered when she stood there. The tight silence was broken by James at that moment, and his voice was filled with a hint of panic. His hands were shaking as he examined the business card, and his face was completely devoid of any facial expressions. "I believe I recognize this name," he mumbled, his words laced with hesitation. "I think I recognize this name, Brown, from the hospital where I work." When I realized that everything was falling into place, my heart skipped a beat. It was then that everything came into sharp focus: the hospital, the Brown Medical Corporation, and Dr. Brown, the chairman of the corporation. The calm manner of my spouse stood in stark contrast to the mounting panic that Mary and James were experiencing. In a flash of insight, my husband disclosed his true identity. He was the grandson who had assumed control of the well-known pharmaceutical firm. The expressions on Mary and James's faces were pallid with surprise as they were stunned into stillness when we watched the reality develop in front of us. The veneer of superiority that my sister had maintained for such a long time was shattered. My spouse, with a sense of irony, brought attention to the hypocrisy of someone who is entrusted with the care of others yet is unable to demonstrate empathy and respect for those they are responsible for. The words of my husband lingered in the air like a heavy cloud as Mary and James struggled to come to terms with the news, the stark reminder that true character is not characterized by titles or prestige, but rather by the kindness and humility that we display toward other people was brought to our attention by this event. James, whose face was completely devoid of color, attempted to convey that all started with a misunderstanding. The response of my spouse, on the other hand, was quick and enraged. Angrily, he spewed, "There is no need for explanations. I will inform my father, and you will be responsible for the consequences." James's pleading was ignored despite the fact that he was experiencing a wave of disappointment, and my sister remained there in startled stillness. We did not utter a single word as we walked away, well aware that this was most likely going to be the final time we would encounter them. James was removed of his responsibilities and suffered a considerable pay cut as a result of the aftermath of the incident. Although he narrowly avoided being fired, his co-workers had a negative reaction to him, and my husband's once cold demeanor toward patients had become frigid. This combination of factors created an intolerable work atmosphere, which ultimately led to James's decision to resign. This made it difficult for him to find a new job, and he struggled with unemployment as a result of the rumors that circulated about him. In the meantime, my sister's irresponsibility with money was brought to light, despite the fact that she had a considerable salary, which resulted in James's relationship becoming strained. In the midst of his difficulties, she impulsively made the decision to divorce him under the impression that she could easily find another spouse. Life, however, had other plans in store for us. When we got back together, I observed that her once lovely manner had been replaced by a more stern demeanor. Even our parents found themselves bemoaning her decisions as her romantic possibilities diminished. She is quoted as saying, "I am charming. Why won't anyone spoil me?" at one point. Her envy was evident, and she was obsessed with outperforming me. I was unable to forgive her for her behavior, despite the fact that she had a lot of respect for me. After some time, she was left to deal with the consequences on her own, even by our parents, and she eventually disappeared into obscurity altogether. I, on the other hand, was able to enjoy days of tranquility since I was no longer subject to the harmful influence of my sister. The success of my marriage and the satisfaction I derived from my work offered me happiness on a daily basis, particularly when I got closer to the prospect of growing our family. I focused on the tranquility of my life while gently touching my expanding abdomen. I was pregnant at the time. Above is today's story. If you like it, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up.